Hey guys, Pro1701 here, and today we're going to talk about episode 2 of The Mine Robber. I am really enjoying this story so far. This is my first time ever seeing The Mine Robber, and I just kind of wanted to give my thoughts on each individual episode as I'm progressing through the story and what I think of the story thus far. I really enjoyed episode 2. I'm really loving the story and the fact that they're outside of time and outside of reality and kind of in almost like another dimension of nothingness. It really lends itself to what's going on. That's realized really well. I love, at the beginning, it does a quick recap of the ending of episode 1, which I loved that ending. And I like, because I know Fraser Hines got sick, and that's why they had to bring in somebody else to play him for this episode. But the fact that it happens in this story where you can kind of just do what you want to, this kind of fantasy world, this kind of surreal world. I love how they do it with him turning into the cardboard cutout and then his face being removed and the doctor having to take the little cutout pieces of his eyes, nose, and mouth and put them back on. And I love the fact the doctor gets it wrong. That whole scene is very much the Doctor. It's the Doctor being the Doctor. It's a very Doctor thing to do. And I really feel like a lot of doctors would have done the same thing. But Troughton is the one who really originates that to me. It's one of the reasons I love Troughton. And I love how when he's doing it, he's like, yes, that's definitely his nose. Yes, definitely. And it's not until he gets it done, he's like, oh no, I've gotten it wrong. I absolutely love that. It's very the Doctor. You know, it's easy for me to picture like the 11th Doctor doing the same thing. Yes, it's definitely the nose. I've got that right. Yes. Oh, I've gotten that wrong. Hi, how you doing, Doctor? Yes. You know, it's very, the 11th Doctor would do the same thing. There really is a lot of the second Doctor in the 11th Doctor. Maybe it's one of the reasons why I'm so fond of the 11th Doctor, too. But the more I see of the second Doctor, the more I see of the second Doctor in the 11th Doctor, if that makes sense. I really enjoyed the riddles in it, like when the children are talking to the Doctor and they want to know, you know, what can you get out of sword. I figured that out before he said it, which is not really a hard riddle, but, you know, as I was watching it, before he comes up with the answer, I was like, words. And so when he says words, I was like, ha. Again, not hard, but I felt pleased with myself. Same thing later with the door, with the fake door, and when it's a door, not a door. And I was like, when it's a jar. It's an old joke. But naturally, when Troughton gets it, when it's a jar, I was like, ha! Not gonna lie, I felt pleased with myself. And so it had me really engaged with the story. I was having a really good time with it. And I love when I saw, I believe in the UK it's pronounced Bernard. You know, here in the States we say Bernard. But I believe most of the time in the UK it's pronounced Bernard. When it's Bernard, was it Horsfall, or however you pronounce his name? He's in several Doctor Who's. I didn't know he was in this one. But when I saw him as that one kind of 1600s pirate-like character, I was like, ah! Because I really love when he shows up in Doctor Who. And I got so excited. I was like, because he plays, of course, one of the main Time Lords in the War Games. The main one in the War Games that's at the Doctor's trial. He just has this regal voice, that very nice toned voice when he talks. You've been put on trial, Doctor. It's very commanding, very charismatic. You just listen to what he has to say. No matter what he says, you're like, yes, that's a good idea. We should do that. Just a magnificent voice. And I love him in the War Games. He also shows up in Planet of the Daleks as the captain of the Thals that are there on the planet. And he's also in The Deadly Assassin as another Time Lord. And those are the main 3 stories I knew he was in. I didn't realize he had done any more. So when he shows up, I'm like, I got really excited. I like him. I don't know, just that voice, I guess. But he's a really good actor. So that had me excited and fired up for the episode. I like, again, somebody else having to play Jamie. And just all the surreal things going on in the story, like the door turning into a jar. They have to pull her out of the giant jar. I like when they boost Jamie up to look around the forest. It's actually, all the trees are actually letters. And they're actually saying words. It's like they're standing on a giant book. And it's saying old quotes like, look before you leap and all that. That's such a neat concept. It's very Doctor Who when Doctor Who is doing a magnificent job of being Doctor Who. This is a type of concept Doctor Who does really well, and the execution of it is done really well. And I love at the end when they're being herded by wind-up toy soldiers, life-size wind-up toy soldiers, which are realized really well on the screen. And then the cliffhanger with the unicorn tying into Jamie's dream from earlier. I mean, so what was the cliffhanger for that episode? They're being charged out by a unicorn. Wait, what? But it's Doctor Who, and it pulls it off, and the Doctor's like, no, don't run, stand your ground. I absolutely love it. It's a good cliffhanger. It's a really good story. Doctor Who, one of the things I had to check was I wasn't sure who wrote it, and I was curious, and I looked, and it's like Peter Ling, and I'm not really familiar with him, but when I was looking on the box right below it, it said, directed by David Maloney. Then I was like, David Maloney, that's a name I know. Very good Doctor Who director. And that could be one of the reasons why I'm enjoying this story so much. I tend to love stories that David Maloney directed. He was such a good director. But I really enjoy it. Doctor Who, it's doing the two things it needs to do to make a good Doctor Who story. It's taking a good idea that's been formed into a really good script from what I've seen thus far, and then is executing it really well. Because sometimes Doctor Who has one but not the other. God Complex, terrible script, great execution. Power of Kroll, decent to good script, terrible execution. But this is pulling both off really well so far. Because some ideas just don't work. It's like, what is that Series 11 episode? It Takes You Away. I don't like that episode, but there is a good concept in that episode of this other universe that's sentient, that can't mix with ours. There is a kernel of a really good concept in that's very Doctor Who that I really like. The execution of It Takes You Away is awful. It's terrible. It is garbage. It is such a crap episode. Makes Power of Kroll look like a masterpiece bad. That's how bad it is. And you know how I feel about Power of Kroll. But I will watch Power of Kroll 12 times before I ever watch that episode once again. That is an episode, It Takes You Away is an episode I never want to see again. It's god-awful. But there's a kernel of a good idea in there. The rest of the script doesn't fill it out well, and the execution doesn't fill it out well. But a kernel of a good idea. But this story takes everything it's doing really well. I love this fantasy setting. I love this surreal setting. And I love the fact it's pulling it off on a classic Doctor Who budget. It really is taking this less is more minimalist approach, part of which is probably done to stay within that budget, but it's pulling it off. Because I think one of the reasons why some of these classic Doctor Who stories are so good is because they had such a limited budget to work with. They had to make the stories just fire on all cylinders, which, again, that doesn't always happen in classic Who. But the reason why it happens so often, especially in the 60s and the 70s, is I think they're making up for the minimalist budget, the small budget that they have. Because I really think if you give somebody too big of a budget, then they can almost relax a little bit because they can rely on the budget. But when you give somebody a small budget and they have to think about it, they have to make it work, they have to figure out, how do I do this with only this amount of money? And they have to start getting creative and really using the old gray cells, so to speak. I think you can accomplish a lot with that. I really think the more you make people think, sometimes the better end product you're going to have. It's kind of like, say you're at a nightclub with a friend, and there's this really attractive woman across the bar. You're out at a club somewhere, and you want to go over and talk to her, but you figure you probably don't have a shot. And so you don't. But if one of your friends is like, you don't have a chance, dude. There's no way you have a chance. I'll bet you there's no way. Then you might start thinking, you know what? Screw you. I'll go over there and prove you wrong. And then you go over there and talk to her. And maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe it does work out. Life is strange. But it's because your friend was like, nah, you can't do that. I think of that kind of the same way with the budget. You know, if you have this much of a budget, it'll get done. I can do whatever I want. I got all this money to work with. But if you only have this budget, you got to think about it. You got to work at it. You got to put effort into it because you're more motivated to make a good product. And I think that's one of the reasons why Classic Who sells. And I'm very much enjoying this story so far, having seen 2 episodes. I'm really looking forward to episode 3. So that's my thoughts on episode 2 of The Mind Robber. What do you think of this video so far? What do you think of The Mind Robber? Although no spoilers, please. Because it does seem to be a well-regarded story. Anyway, other things to do, click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications so you never miss out on another video. I also have a Patreon if you like what I do and would like to support what I do. There is a link to that down in the description below. Most importantly though, thank you for watching.